Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everybody, it's William Harris here. I'm the founder and CEO of Element, and I'm the host of this podcast where I will be featuring experts in the D2C industry, sharing strategies on how to scale your business and achieve your goals. Today on the show, I would like to introduce to you Robert Gilbreath here. He was the GM of ShipStation and was originally the CMO. He's been in e-commerce SaaS for over a decade, and before that, he was on the other side of the trade show aisle. Robert, I am excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, William. Really excited as well.
Cool. We are going to dig in some fun questions here. There's some fun, there's some seriousness. But before we do that, I do want to at least announce our sponsorship here. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is a performance-driven e-commerce marketing agency. We focus on finding the best opportunities for you to grow and scale your business. We've actually helped over 13 customers now get acquired. The largest sold for $800 million, sold one to GoDaddy. We focus on optimizing your ads around EBITDA, around profit, and I think that's a really interesting way to approach growth, something that we're excited about how we do things a little bit differently there. But now, getting into the good stuff, Robert, give me a little bit of the backstory here. You came into this, you were the CMO of ShipStation, GM most recently. ShipStation went through being publicly traded, went back to private. There's a lot of fun and interesting stuff here. How did you get to where you are? Tell me about this.
Yeah, William, you said it earlier. The trade show aisle is something that I've shared with people, and they think I'm trying to do some metaphor for something else, but it's very literal. I was an early adopter of online marketing and selling online. Really kind of thanks to my dad. He had his first eBay store was in 96 or 97. And I was sort of his gopher, helper, box guy, picking parts. It was auto parts. And so, that got my, wetted my whistle, if you will, into selling online. And it was amazing to see what we could do, if I tweaked the title or if we offered international shipping. And I got the bug, right? I didn't know I was learning SEO or I was learning copywriting by doing that. I was still in college at the time, about to finish. And that just sort of implanted this love of doing business online for me. And, over time, I didn't go into marketing or online retail right out of college. I had a few stints in some financial service industries. And, but then I had an opportunity to join a retailer. And it's really funny. I actually got hired originally. The interview was to run their private label credit card. It was a brick and mortar retailer, a regional retailer here in Texas and the surrounding states. And that was the original job. My financial service background set me up well for that.
Sure.
My boss, really smart lady. They also had an opening for a webmaster, right? The term these companies used to have. And she saw on my resume that I had some of this experience and was like, hey, how would you like both jobs? And a little bit of the bartering there was that people always asked me, did you get 2 salaries? Of course not. But we talked about what it meant to be a webmaster there. And they already had a fairly robust internal website between the headquarters and the stores. They didn't have anything beyond a 3-page brochure site for the actual public facing side of the business. And so through interviewing and then later joining the team, I got to build my first e-commerce site. Now I say build, it's very, very archaic. I used outside web developers who had also done some cool things for our marketing team and the corporate in-store marketing functions. And these guys, we built this very archaic. It was one product line. It was one product line originally because that manufacturer would drop ship for us. And it was a manufacturer that had hundreds of SKUs, but we couldn't carry all 100 SKUs. We couldn't give them that much shelf space at the brick and mortar retail. So they loved it, right? And so super archaic, but then I'm next level of being into this. I have to keep doing this. And that turned into what became my online retail career, where I was either early on in marketing and merchandising at online retailers or getting hired by larger retail who was, of course, sort of going through replatforming. And the other thing I joke about that, again, is somewhat very literal, is I come from a time before SaaS. So, that thing we built at that original retailer, that was all self-hosted, very archaic. There were even some manual processes that had to happen to actually complete the request for the drop ship. So I have this background where I was forced to build all these tools for myself, by myself or with a team. And that continued for a while. And then I made this transition to a much larger retailer who had built all their own things in the beginning, but those things just weren't scaling. It just didn't make sense for them to have a multi-million dollar online business running on a server in a closet in Austin, Texas. Doesn't make sense, right? And so when I talk about the trade show piece, where I'm being literal about that is like, it used to be Internet Retailer Magazine was the trade rag that we
Yep.
all geeked out over. And they launched, and I want to say this was 2004, 2005, the first Internet Retailer Conference and Expo. And it was in the basement of a hotel in Chicago. I always joke because eBay was there. It was a tabletop show, right? So it's all, 3x8 tables with these, pretty archaic backdrops. And I went to every IRCE, for over 10 years. And there was a year where the year before I went as the retailer, and literally the next year I was setting up a 10x10 booth in the early days of ShipStation.
Love
And
it.
so, and I'll just, to fast forward, I just went to Las Vegas for Shop Talk, maybe a month or so ago, and there were people there in their own booths that were at that first show. There was one
Wow.
custom web dev guy who's still around. And so like for me, I've been across this whole piece, and it's an industry that I love. The people are great. We're all trying to do really good things. And at the core where I am today, it's like, even though I'm on the other side of the trade show aisle, I'm getting a chance to help all these former versions of myself, if you will, right? And I'm able to give them and help them,
I love that. Being able to help people out in, the path that they're on now. And I just even love the idea of the history there with IRCE. IRCE happens to be one of my favorite trade shows as well. I thought I was pretty early at IRCE, but you've got me beat then by a little bit. But I can remember when I transitioned website at the time, I want to say we had about 70,000 SKUs. And we were transitioning from Magento. This would have been maybe 2014, 2015, transitioning from Magento over to Shopify Plus. And at the time, Shopify didn't even have a 10x10 booth at IRCE. That's how early even getting into Shopify Plus was. And I remember people saying, it's like, you're nuts. Why would you transition to Shopify? That's for little websites. It's not for, big websites. Fast forward though, a couple of years later, I ended up speaking at IRCE there, which was really fun. And I'm trying to think. We've got Tommy Walker was there. Then eventually Shopify Plus had really nice, set up there. Tommy Walker was the editor in chief there. Went out to dinner with him, and heard him rap. He did a nice, real fast rap and everything. Just like fun times though that have been had at IRCE. So
no,
right
it's definitely that show has changed over the years, but I think same as what you're saying. It's got a warm place in my heart, and I'm looking forward to going again this year. I think I have to go back and see. I think I've missed. They went to San Diego for 2 years.
Really?
They didn't do Chicago, and I didn't go to those, not because I have anything against San Diego. I was in a different industry. I was in between. I'm a boomerang when it comes to the whole ShipStation world. I missed those, and maybe I missed one other in Chicago. So I don't know what year they're on now, but it's almost the kind of thing like they can keep morphing it and making it somewhat different, but it sort of has to be. It's that summer event in my mind that we all get to meet up at.
I agree. There was a lot of transition back and forth, like you said, and you ended up at ShipStation, CMO there, and they went public. Correct me if I'm wrong. Went public. Eventually took that back private, and that's when you came back on as the GM. Through all of this, you've done a lot of significant leadership just at the C-suite level and other places here too. And one of the things you and I have talked about is how hard it is to be in the C-suite, to be the CEO, CMO, something along those lines. And there was a TikTok I remember seeing. Elon Musk said something to the effect of, every one of the worst, if you're the CEO, it's literally your job for every one of the worst problems to bubble up to you. If it gets solved before it gets to you, that's a good thing. But the ones that can't get solved or need to get to you, it's, that is your job, is to solve the absolute worst problems. And that's true how it can feel sometimes being the CEO of any kind of a company. Tell me more about it. Like, why have you said that being the CEO is the hardest job in the world?
Yeah, and I guess it's easy for me to say that. I've been in the room where these things happen for years, and I have to say I think I've been lucky, even before I moved across into the SaaS side of things, where I've been at companies and with groups of C staff that I was able to, be a person initially, when I wasn't a C-level person, but be a person that group could come to, right? And I could be a confidant with them and be trusted. And then I became a person that was known that, like, so those things you're talking about, that the rest of the team's not knocking out, or yes, it is a C-level thing, but the C-level person is too busy. It's not going to, these one-off projects, all right. I have typically taken on that role, right? It's a little bit of put me in coach is the way that, and I've been lucky to be at places, and even early days of ShipStation, very small team. I was number 10 or 11 there. Yeah, we were bootstrapped when I got there, really scrappy. The marketing team was one person. It was a writer, wonderful content person. She's a very early adopter of social media as a means of getting community out. So like that clicked really quick. I also had to thank the culture of Station and the way that we function together as a C staff. I joke, like, people hear this and think it was bad, but there's a lot of stuff that was sort of by committee of C staff people, right? And so, a lot of those were very heated debates, and some yelling and some hugging and crying and all those things. But like that
That's
led
not bad.
to it almost didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter who see what in the room. It doesn't matter. It was we. I like to say it's we EO. And so part of the difficulty with the C staff is not just the problems that go there. It's also sort of a lack of who do you talk about these things with. So like, a CEO shouldn't be venting overtly to the whole company about their own stress or the problems they're having. Like, they have to be able to keep a brave face. What I'm finding now, and I think you've sort of alluded to this, I've recently left the whole Octane ShipStation family and it's sort of refining my way and doing some consulting and taking on gigs, partly because the more sort of SaaS providers and e-com I can help, the more merchants I can help, right? And what I'm finding is, used to hear like the CEO is the loneliest job. I think we're at a whole new level of that now. And part of it, I think I'm sort of framing this, and so we could debate this a little bit. A lot of these CEOs that have gone through COVID, the COVID times, and what that's meant to their business, good and bad, and what it's meant to hiring remote and cultures being changed at companies. I'm finding a lot of CEOs that when I have these sort of confidant discussions with them, they're sort of at the end of their rope, right? And they're sort of like, if you're like me, like if I have a bunch of projects and I'm like running, going, and then once I know that I'm done, sometimes you sort of just crash, right? And what I'm hearing in some of my consultative calls is that these folks they kind of feel like they're crashing, and if they don't have the right dynamic with the rest of their C-suite, which I think I'm lucky, like I said, I feel like I've had a good dynamic in the past, they kept us sane together, right? And if one person was feeling down, it would sort of be this mutual pickup could happen. And so I'm running into that now. So it ends up being a little bit different than just, team members think that, oh, you're the boss, that's the place to be. They don't understand what that limit. There's a limit when you have that over your shoulder.
And I can relate to that. There's a drawing that I've drawn before in my own personal feelings with this sometimes, where it's almost like this circle of people holding hands, and then there's you in the center of this circle, as if to say center of attention, right? Potentially, where it's like, hey, the eyes are focused there, and it's the reality is, though, it's like, well, but there's nobody holding your hand. You're the center of the attention. You're in this position, but there's nobody that's in your corner. Sometimes it can feel that way, and so how. This is a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are likely the owners, CEOs, founders of stores, SaaS companies. What are some ways that you practically help CEOs deal with this, or what are some things that we can do if we're starting to feel that? Well, what are some of the signs and symptoms first of all, and then how do we practically deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, and everybody handles stress differently. So if we can go, that's maybe a whole other podcast to talk about, like, people's bodies react and their mentality reacts differently to different form. Go
ahead, I'm still listening.
Well, sometimes people do self-care as part of how they handle such things. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, what was that? I don't even remember what the question was. Humor can be a really good way to alleviate some of the stress.
Yeah, signs and symptoms. We were talking, for those who are just listening, I just clipped my toenails on video. So signs and symptoms though of some of that stress that you're feeling as a CEO, and how do you practically deal with that? Like you said, we can't necessarily talk to the
Yeah.
whole team, but there is a push to try to bring team members in there and be vulnerable as a CEO, but there's a limit to that
No.
as well. What's that
Yeah,
dynamic?
no, and we've all been through different coaching sessions and stuff. And I'd say for me personally, having now in my in my more mature age, like I've been through so many of these, the ones that I've been through that have the most impact are the ones where there is a group that's being vulnerable together. And actually, just I did a session recently with one of my clients where had the CEO and their C staff all in the same room, and it was a little bit of mediation, and it ended up like some of the words they were using were, they felt like they were misaligned, but it's like they were using different words, right? And they were all running after, probably the right goals, but it's almost like they didn't do the kumbaya in the beginning to stack
Sure.
hands. They just went off. And so, walk them through that process. I mean, there's got to be, we as leaders, we want our teams to have work-life balance, and we want our teams to be stress-free. And we have to, give that to ourselves as well. Right. And it's different for different people. You and I have had conversations in the past about this. Like I have to get up fairly early and go work out. And I
Yeah.
do it, and I'm back home before anyone in my home is awake. And so, like, well, so what, you say? I say, well, because then I don't feel any guilt that I took anything away from my morning time with my children and my wife,
Yeah.
right? If I did it while the time that they're going to school, I would miss them waking up. I would miss, a little bit of coffee breakfast time with them. And so for me, if I start my day like that, I feel I'm already starting it like I'm somewhat fulfilled. I did something for myself that feels awesome, and working out's great. And, but then I also can still come home and, be a parent and do those things. Right.
Hmm.
Um, I also, my other thing is just taking walks, whether it's by yourself or with someone else. And, I ex coworker at one of the startups I was at, sort of in between my boomerang period, Gary, he had this thing that he called a walk and talk, and it's like,
Yeah.
all it really was a one-on-one, but you're out talking, right? And you're out in nature. And this is not like going hiking down a trail. It's funny,
Right.
not funny is that startup was across the street from a really old cemetery here in Austin. And the best loop around the neighborhood was you would end up looping through the cemetery. So it's like kind of weird, right? That you're in this
Sure.
cemetery, but every once in a while that would actually lead to some other interesting conversations, or you might go look at a few tombstones and look at names or something. So, I think it's to each their own, you know.
Sure.
I think also, like, back to like the lonely CEO or the hard part, back to that, like you can't go home and complain to your partner about your job. Like, it's not healthy. And we've all done it in some
Right.
degrees, but like
Yep.
it's not healthy. Like, even if your significant other is also a CEO of a company, that's probably not the
Yep.
right person to do it. So I do personally, I've always had some version of a coach, psychologist, someone that I can talk to. For me personally, if they don't push back on what you're saying, that's not the right coach or helper. If it's someone
Yeah.
who's just there to coddle you, that's not helpful either.
Yeah.
And so, you know, um, be able to talk to someone who is impartial, but is trying to help you, be better, feel better, do better, I think
Hmm.
is also key. And I'm finding with some of these conversations I'm having with CEOs right now, frankly, they're not open to go to like a psychologist, but they're very
Sure.
open to talk to a coach. Right. And that's a whole other discussion too. Like, there's still a little bit of stigma there, but,
Absolutely.
um, you know,
There shouldn't be though.
yeah,
I
no.
like what you're talking about. There's both. So I have a mentor that I really appreciate talking to, and he is the type of person who will absolutely call out any BS that I've got going on, and I appreciate that. And I also go to see a psychologist, not as often as I maybe should, but I do, and you know for different reasons. One of those, they are experts in the way the brain thinks, and sometimes there are just errors in the brain. And I do like to think about it like a computer where it's like you can get into these negative feedback loops that feel impossible to get yourself back out
Oh
of.
yeah.
And you know that it's wrong. You know that you're thinking incorrectly, but you can't figure out how to get that brain back on the right track. And
Mm,
so I do appreciate going to see a psychologist. And I remember actually my
yeah.
psychologist asking me, he was like, well, why don't you talk to your wife about these problems? And I remember just saying this was like, I used to, but the reality is like it's not for her to necessarily have to carry some of that weight because I'm not necessarily looking
Yeah.
to talk to her about the problem as much as it is how do I get my brain back on the right track of thinking? And so that's something
Yeah.
that I feel like, sure, I could tell her about the problem. That solves nothing though. What I really need is like, how
Yeah.
get me off this, crazy cycle.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. And my current coach, mentor, psychologist is an example of like, if there's no BS there, resets how I'm thinking about things, pushes back enough and doesn't necessarily tell me the answer, which, my personal experience, like coming home and telling my wife that I had this issue, she's a problem solver and a planner by trade. So she's like, she'll hear it and her
Sure.
like instinct, her professional instinct is to tell me how to fix it. But that she doesn't have all the context. I'm just venting. And so,
Right.
this could turn into like a relationship thing. It happens the other way. Come home and they've had a rough day or something's going on. It's in that case, it's about listening. At some point, there's other stuff that couples and people should be talking to each other about that aren't those kind of like outside of the home problems, right?
Yeah. And
But
there's the right
yeah,
time, the right things that need to be brought up as well. But I agree that, there's just some other things that are good to talk to professionals at certain things. A mentor who's been down that specific road and has shoes that you can, walk in your shoes a little bit, or a psychologist who understands the way the brain is thinking and the loops that it can get triggered into. And, they have those nice little tricks too. And I can remember there was one time where I was just really feeling kind of frustrated about a few things, and there wasn't a good reason to. I could logically look at it and say, we're doing better. And it's like I pulled back and looked at, year over year over year. And it's like we're still up really good. And I don't remember what the exact situation was, but let's say that we're up 200%, but I had planned on being up 300%. So, only being up 200% is a disappointment, right? We have these big goals
yeah,
sometimes as entrepreneurs. And so, yeah, being disappointed about it, it's a silly thing to be disappointed about. I don't remember the exact situation, but I can remember one of the things of feeling like how do you feel like you're winning again? And one of the simple ways to feel like you're winning again in a situation like that that I had heard actually psychologist recommended was from a book called 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Make your bed. When you get up
okay,
in the morning, make your bed. It's a
yeah,
really small thing that you can do that just like you make your
yeah,
bed and you're like, well, I did that. I successfully accomplished this. And sometimes it is just those little things. It's
yeah,
like, well, have you stopped working out? Okay, well, go work out and you'll just cross it off your list that you've worked out.
yeah,
You might not necessarily have hit the weight goal that you wanted or whatever, but you're like, hey, I made my bed. I worked out. And so I have this planner where it's like, I even have my, my handwritten stuff and I love Asana. Sometimes I'll
yeah,
take things in this handwritten stuff and it's got little check boxes for like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Did you do this thing?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. A version of that. I'll go off on a little tangent, but I think it's still relevant. Like I believe that your brain can only fire so many decisions in a day, right? At some point, it either gets lazy or it doesn't want to do it anymore. And so
Absolutely.
part of that also, it's a little bit of procrastination deterrent, but it's like make a list. There's a book by one of the founders of Keller Williams Real Estate. He actually lives here in Austin. It's called The One Thing, and it talks about basically like what's the thing
Good
you're
book.
working on, and depending on how like any book, it can be the one big project. It could be setting up these frameworks. And I don't remember if it was in there or another book that was talking about like decision procrastination kind of thing, but it was using sort of the situation of, let's say you get home from work, it's date night with your wife or your
Mhm.
significant other or whatever, but you haven't really planned out where you're going to go. Okay. Now, one thing that you're doing is that you're not going to go out in your own home, right? So the checkbox version there is get in the car and at least pick left or right out of your neighborhood, right?
Sure.
And so many times, like you could be fighting there, but you could also be in the car and head somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I think it's a similar thing to the make your bed, like accomplish something, right?
hmm
And
hmm
then the next thing will come. The next checkbox gets to be checked, and we all know how good that feels.
Well, there's two things you said that I want to touch on. One is about the so many decisions, and then the other one is about, let's say date night. I want to come back to that. So many decisions in a day, and I think that that's why Steve Jobs had his uniform, if you would, or you didn't have to think about it. One of my favorite inventors, Dean Kamen, invented the Segway scooter. That's what he's known for. But before that, he invented the insulin pump.
Yeah.
Serial inventor, had his own island. It actually got a fake bill of independence signed and everything, and had an amphibian. A really fun guy, but he had It was, like a Canadian tuxedo basically that he wore. And it's like, that was his thing. And he said that was so he doesn't have to think about
Yeah.
it. And I've reached that point
Yeah.
at times in my career as well, where, I've made so many decisions and I'm burnt out. And I will say that I think that is
Yeah.
a sign of burnout. And if you do get to the point where you feel like you can't make any more decisions, you really do need to really consider whether or not you're getting to a burnout stage, because I've felt that before.
Yeah.
And it's a very frustrating feeling where you really just feel like you're like, I don't know. I can't make another decision. I don't want to make another decision. And one of the ways that I at least helped myself through some of that too, is I try not to make decisions that just don't matter anymore. And an example of that is sometimes I like to go to a restaurant and I don't even want to look at the menu. I want you as the waiter or waitress. What do you recommend? What's your favorite thing, or what's the most great? Sounds good. Bring that out to me. I love exploring new things, and it's just I don't have to now mull over this menu and figure out. Great, bring me that. Sounds great.
You're taking it to a new level. I feel like I'm adventurous, but I don't think I've done that ever. But now I need to try it. That's a good challenge.
Yeah,
Challenge
okay.
for me to.
And then coming back to the date night, though, the thing that I like about that is it reminds me of EOS Traction, Gino Wickman, and they talk a lot about the rocks. I don't know if you're familiar with this metaphor, but it's the idea of like there's a vase, right, and you could put rocks in it, and you could put pebbles and sand and water. If you put it in the wrong order, if you put the sand and then the pebbles and the rocks, there's not enough room for it to all fit in here. But if you put the rocks in, then the pebbles, then the sand and the water, it all fits in. It's the same amount of content. And it is that idea of what are the things that are the most important to you. And these need to be values that are the most important for the business, but also to you personally. What are the things that you value, and what are those rocks? And date night absolutely should be up there. If it's not, your marriage isn't going to last very long. And so you got to figure out, okay, if that's a rock, how do you make sure that you start scheduling that and planning that ahead of time and making sure that that's important? And I think that does help alleviate a lot of the other frustrations that we can feel, because there is a point where you say, great, I had a bad day at work. That's fine, but I'm still doing good here. But if you say, I had a bad day at work and well, we haven't done a date night in a couple months, and so I'm failing at that too. And and I didn't put the girls to bed last night, so I'm failing at that too. And that's where that psycho loop can start catching up to you really quickly if you haven't prioritized those things.
Yeah, and I'd say that to me, I translate that currently into some of the work that I'm doing into like you start getting really almost you lose your connections.
Yeah,
and like that word being connected means all kinds of things. Like if it's the CEO that feels like they're making too much time making unimportant decisions, they're starting to feel not connected, right? If they're frustrated at work and they're frustrated, then they come home and they take out that frustration on the family, whatever, then they lose that connection as well. And so there's a piece of, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, and I've done this for years, my bio line is very blatant of who and what I am. I'm a husband first. I'm a father second. Then I have some of my other, marketing and SaaS or whatever kinds of things. And I think it's important for folks. I think, back to what we talked about earlier, like this post-COVID, CEOs feeling kind of burnt out, kind of wondering what to do. Some of the rhythms and the patterns that we might have used as professionals before COVID, they change. Like in what you guys do, like some of the algorithms in the math around doing online advertising, it's different now. So, that some of the things we used to do don't continue to work, but it's got to figure out how to stay connected to others, stay connected to like your why, Simon Sinek, kind of the why of what you're doing.
Yep.
And I think a challenge for CEOs today is like, if they're feeling, their employees are feeling, potentially burnt out and disconnected or whatever. So it's like, but the CEO has to really feel connected back to the mission of the company and what they're trying to accomplish. Whether or not it's the same line on the chart as before COVID or right after COVID or whatever, they need to feel confident about that themselves. That's the only way they're going to make their teams feel confident, right? I do. The other thing about connections that I've always pushed, and I have an uncle here in Austin who is part of one of the oldest in person, still continuously going networking group. And this is old fashioned networking. They meet at basically like a supper club place for lunch once a week. He is the only lawyer in the group. It's very old school. There's a plumber. There's a guy who owns a pest control company. You name it. They're all there. I could never join with him because there's already a marketer on there, which is funny because it's an old direct marketing guy, but he's the marketer, And so my modern version of that is, obviously we have LinkedIn and we have other kind of meetups and whatnot. And for me, it does blow my mind the number of C-level folks, and not so much with the marketers and the sales guys, because I think we're just naturally outgoing and we want to do those things. But it boggles my mind the amount of CEOs that don't have their own outside of the office network. That's not, the home life, right? And you see
Yeah.
people that get into EO and these different groups, and you can see for a lot of time that is one of their ways to connect, right? And they'll
Mhm.
use those other connections as an outlet to be able to talk about these things and get advice and whatnot. So I'm still surprised at, to me, the lack of that going on.
Yeah. It's
So
a good shout
yeah,
out for EO in other organizations like that as well. Shane Erickson, I'm going to give a shout out to him. He has bugged me about getting into EO for a few years now. And I do need to make that happen. I think that's a smart thing. It's one of those things where, I need to prioritize it. But there's
right.
something about where, getting together with a group of people that are in similar situations, and you can feel like, well, they're not in the exact situation. Maybe like you said, it's like, well, they're not a marketer like I am, or they're not or they don't run an agency, they run these others. But the reality is it comes down to the same core concepts. It's like, well, you either have a people problem, or you have a, profit problem, or you have a production problem. That's about the three main ones I think I've heard. And so it's like, they've been through those same situations. And so there's, ways that they can at least, commiserate or relate to what's going on with, what you're going through and how that's
Yeah.
affecting your job and your psychosocial and your family and all of those things. So
Yeah. There's something you said that, interact with folks who have maybe seen similar patterns or been through similar patterns. It
mhm.
can sort of pattern match, if you will, to what you and or your business
Yeah.
is going through. That's what's been fun about what I'm doing right now, like being able to talk to, like examples or like partner companies of ShipStation. And some of these, I was the person who developed the partnership to begin with. And so being able to, chat with these folks, having sort of some insider information on what they're going through, has been interesting. And I think for me, it's been an interesting way, my own connection, right? Like for me to connect
Mhm.
with these folks. And, I know I'm coming from a place of trying to help and trying to move them through some of these issues that they're experiencing.
Yeah. So if we were going to give people, actionable advice here, it would be, get involved in some type of a, peer group, basically, right? Like not just online. And that's fine. You can meet online, but you need to get together in real
Uh,
life with a few people that are in some kind of a similar situation to you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I'm, one of my New Year's resolutions. And I know we're doing this virtually. You're up where you are, and
Right.
I'm down in Austin. One of my New Year's resolutions is if I see someone, if someone wants to connect and meet, if they're in Austin, we're meeting in person. And if that means that we're not meeting for a month, that's fine.
Hmm.
I've made one exception because it's someone who actually lives here, but she's doing sort of around the world, long trip. I'll meet with her over Zoom. She's not going to be back anytime soon. But other than that, it's been interesting. There's been a few people that are like taken aback, and
Sure.
they, I joke and say, I'm not asking you to come to the office every day of the week. I'm just asking you to meet me at the coffee shop that's literally halfway between our homes, and
Yeah.
let's get out. So I think that's other piece as well. Whether you have an extreme bias to asking employees to come into the office or not. I mean, to me, it just makes sense that being out, face to face, handshake to handshake, like that can't be replaced, with 100% virtual stuff all the time. Um,
Yeah.
so
And
yeah,
I'm
even
going to get
folks that I know that are remote, like they need to get out as well.
I'm going to get weird here,
Yeah,
right? Like from a let's say a biophysical perspective, I think there's something about like just being around each other and like the sweat that exists or whatever, where it's like it encourages like like it's almost like your pheromones being around you going out and accomplishing it makes me say I'm going to go out there and accomplish it too. It's like I want to fight
yeah,
alongside you, right? And I think that there's something that we need just in being around physically around other people that are doing similar things too.
yeah. I'm with you. I get energy from it. I mean, like, even looks like I even mentioned earlier, like I don't think I would have had the same career development opportunities had I been, you know, in the situation where half the meetings are Zoomed, or whatever your virtual meeting platform of choice. Um, the impromptu things wouldn't have happened. You know, when we were in the office all the time, the amount of like random meetings that would happen that I would be lucky enough to get pulled into, right? Those weren't gonna those don't happen in the same way.
Yeah.
And some of the tools they have like instant huddles and stuff, they try to make that happen. But it's tough, right? It's tough. And, um, I'm hopeful. I think there's some new iteration of all this. It's got to happen, right? Where it's,
Yeah.
are the tools for the virtual meetings going to be smarter, or are they going to use the newest versions of AI to help improve like body language reading and whatnot. Or we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see because we know it's not going away, right?
No. And I'll tell you where I think it's going to go. And here's where I'd like it to go. I actually talked to Justin Koffenberg at Rally Ventures about this, man, maybe back in 2020, I think right before everything shut down. But I really like VR. Actually, I've invested in a really cool VR company called Allegory up in Toronto. And deepfake his technology has gotten really far along the way. I don't know if you've seen the codec avatars that Facebook has, but it is you. It is a video of you. It looks identical to you. And I think one of the scary parts about it and why it's not there yet is one, who drives it? And so I think Zuckerberg said something to the effect of, we can't even launch it until we know that there's like a way where it's like iris scanner and it's like, it's only you that can drive your avatar. And there's also a processing component here. It takes like 2 weeks to process this, but let's just imagine, you and I wanted to get together in person, but hey, you're in Texas, I'm in Minnesota. And there's all the body language motions and stuff like that are taking place. But if I had my VR headset on, you had yours, we're sitting around a table, and right now it's very avatars, what is it? Horizon Workspaces, which I've done. And it's fun, but it's very, animated. But if it was you and it was me and it deep fakes your face onto it, so that way, it's got cameras on the inside. So it's seeing your eye movements and expressions and things like that. And I think that feels a lot better. I still don't think it's a replacement, but I think it's significantly better than just Zoom.
You know what? I have not seen all the sort of, they've all been sort of cartoonish. They remind me of like playing Wii back in the day and like the little bobblehead looking characters and things. I've did a few virtual trade shows at the height of COVID, and it was, it was nice to be able to get together and like a booth was a room and those kind of things. But there's got to be the next iteration of that. Plus in the VR, we can play golf and do other games and stuff too. There's some fun that could be had. You imagine doing a team outing where you have the meeting and then you leave the conference room and you're out playing flag football or you're doing whatever.
Absolutely.
Be kind of interesting.
Well, okay. So playing flag football, that reminds me, that's a good transition into the third thing that you and I have talked about here. So if we're going to say like, these three big things for CEOs who are maybe overwhelmed or feeling like they're in, the toughest job, the loneliest job, whatever in the world. One, mentorship or psychology or something that's helping you, like a business coach, somebody that's helping you along the line of those thinking. Two would be that idea of like making connections, right? And we talked about like getting involved in a peer group. But the third, you said, and there's a phrase you use for this, fun is approved, right? That's the phrase.
Yes, that's it. Yes, it is forever and always.
Yeah. Well, okay. And like, take me through this because somebody else that I really like, Sujin Patel, he's always told me, what's the FOI on that though? What's the fun on investment? But like, fun is approved. Yeah. Why? Why is that a thing that you have made as a big part of what you do?
Look, life in general and like, work life it's stressful enough and hard enough. And we could go down a whole tangent that says like, if you aren't a little bit stressed or having a little bit of angst, you're probably not doing it right? Maybe you're not in the right place or whatever. But, we can call it icebreakers. We can call it whatever. And we see it. Look, it's happened with Slack, right? Every company, until they get to like maybe the annual time where they delete all the things, there are some silly, fun Slack channels, right? Dog lovers, beer people, whatever, right? My version of that goes, back to before SaaS. My version to that is just like goofy things. Close to one of the last like team meetings I had in our office in person with the majority of the people in the room. I don't know what I was thinking, but I look over at the whiteboard. There's, a bunch of whiteboard markers in a container that's like magnet to a thing. I picked them all out. I handed out everyone a marker and I was like, hey, from where you're sitting, try to throw it into the thing. Well, the mood, we were waiting for other people to show up on the Zoom or something. So I didn't back to my being guilty about stuff. We didn't really burn any corporate time or anything. Sure. And people were being goofy about it. One person even suggested like, let's do like a tournament bracket for this. It literally took 5 minutes. Everyone's laughing. Everyone's mood, was elevated. The energy was instantly better. Then you're kind of like razzing the person on Zoom. And I think in that one, we actually, a creative guy was on it. He's based in Pasadena, California. We made him use his pencil cup and he tried to do it. And this guy, again, he's having a good time. And who knows if he was having a good day or not. So like, I think some of this I attribute back to just like having been at companies pre all the startup crazy kind of company stuff, and being at some fairly traditional companies that had sort of this model of like, you're not really goofing around. I was at one retailer where they did leading up to season, because their business is super seasonal. They did basically the version of like Office Olympics, and there was captains from different departments, and you would draft
I love
teams,
that.
and the CTO of the company would go to this weird convenience store here in Austin that also sells flags in any kind of flag or country you can think of, like cheap nylon flags. He would go every year and buy like 6 random flags, usually the funniest or weirdest ones he could find. And he assigned each one. And we actually raised flags in like the main double decker office area, playing the Olympics music, and it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, this is silly. It has nothing to do with our business, but like you would meet people in different departments. The games were like very weird, like almost like Vegas vacation kind of games, And so
Yep.
it's just like it was good. I mean, it goes back to also just like smiling is good for you, laughing is good for you, and so in this case, something like that, it was organized by the company, so there was no guilt or no reason why you wouldn't want to take part.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
think there's a lot of
people that are around me, they know that's one of my, I have too many mantras, but that's one of the ones I've really tried to push.
That's a good one. And I think that there's a lot of research around even increased productivity in people that are enjoying their job. I've witnessed it firsthand, where one of the guys on my team had put something together, and then he had a meeting with me. And on this meeting, we were planning, basically, I was planning what I wanted to do to my business partner. And there's a story that I'll tell you about in a second with that. But it was a really fun meeting, and it was he laughed so much and had so much fun that he said, he messaged me right after our meeting. He was like, "Hey, by the way, here's a new video of what I just put together. Like you inspired me so much. It lifted my spirits in such a way that like I was able to just think clearer and do significantly better work." And I think that that's something that we undervalue. Sometimes it can feel like maybe as a CEO or if you're just counting the peanuts or something, then you're not focused on how much that can really increase the productivity of the people on your team.
Yeah.
So the story though, because this was good, because I told you I was going to do this in the last meeting that we had. It was the day that you and I met the last time. There was speaking of connection, there was an e-commerce meetup that we were hosting, and it happened to be 5 minutes from my business partner's house. Now, we became business partners during COVID. I've actually never been to his house, so that's an important part of the story. And I said, all right, well, he can't come to to this meetup because of something that was going on with his kid's school, but it's 5 minutes from his house. So after this, I told the team, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go TP Jeff's house. And so I did. I went over to his house and TP'd his house, showed the video to the team. That was not his house. I TP'd his neighbor's house. So I have a good video of that on TikTok. I'm happy to share with everybody, but that actually made it 10 times more fun.
Oh yeah. Well, because you kind of got him in trouble because it's his fault, right? You were trying to get him.
Yeah.
No,
but,
that's a great,
having fun, right? Yes, fun is approved.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and yeah. For another podcast, William, we could talk about raising children in a new world and how do you expose them to fun is approved, in a way that doesn't get them in trouble, that's not going to have some other damaging effects, and that's safe and a friendly kind of thing. That would be a different topic for us to cover someday.
It'd be a good topic though, and I think I'd love to dig into that sometime. I will say that there's a lot of ways, if you're looking for other ideas, maybe there's a way that we can start a thread or something of just fun ideas you could do over Zoom meetings or in person. You had mentioned flag football in VR. It was kind of the idea. It reminds me of something I've wanted to do with the team here, and I need to pull the trigger on it. But have you ever seen binocular soccer? Have you ever heard of it? There's a video. It's a sport in Japan. I don't know if it's a big sport, but I've at least seen this video where you basically have binoculars on and then you try to play soccer. So you can't tell how far you are from the ball at all. One of the funniest videos I've ever seen. And I want to do something like that with our team, where we've got a few people on the team that absolutely love soccer. I've never played soccer, but just something like that where it's like, just be silly and goofy and have a good time.
Yeah. So wait, so the binoculars the correct way or backwards? Because you can imagine if they're the correct way, the ball's right there. But if they're backwards, that's when it's like, how far out is this thing, or how close are these people? I mean, now I've got to go. I'm sure there's thousands of videos on YouTube.
What?
I'll
Yeah.
go. I'll
Why
have to
don't
go
I
take a
link to
look.
it in the in the comments here too, or something? But yeah, I
Okay,
think it
perfect.
was I think it was the
Perfect.
correct way. But yeah, the depth perception is all off, so you couldn't tell quite how far you were from the ball.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Along the lines then of having fun, I talked to you about wanting to do this, so I try to have a little bit of fun on the show here as well. So I've put together a silly Ad Libs script. So you were going to pretend here's the scene. So this is an intern's first day on the job at an e-commerce growth agency. You're going to play the part of the intern, but for right now, I probably even shouldn't have said that. Right now, I'm just going to ask you some answers, and you're going to answer this just like a typical Mad Libs would be, and then we're going to act it out here. Okay.
Okay.
So I want you to give me
Okay.
an animal, any animal,
Uh,
aardvark,
hippo.
koala, hippo. Okay. Hippo.
Hippo. Let's do hippo.
And a fruit. What's a fruit?
Banana.
Okay.
Banana.
And let's give an adjective to describe a body part. Hairy.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I don't want to take yours. Yeah. Let's do. We'll say muscular.
Muscular.
Yeah.
Okay. I need a past tense of a verb. So a verb doing something, past tense.
Fell.
Okay. I need an interjection. Let's, ahoy or something, some kind of an interjection.
Oh no, I got to figure out something. That's just, I knew you were going to stump me on one of these
always
things.
Always harder when you're on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Like on delay.
Yeah. How about William, see, I know you were going to get me. Do rock on.
Okay, rock on. How about an adjective to describe Halloween? That's something that describes Halloween. Scary, but something else.
Scary. Let's go scary. Spooky.
All right, let's do spooky. How about, okay, we need a body part now. We need a body part.
Foot.
Okay. And we need, okay, that one's the same one here from above. We need a brand name. Pick any brand name.
Now I'm thinking about foot. I was about to give you a shoe. Say Levi's.
Okay, Levi's. We need an adjective to describe a zombie.
Drippy.
Drippy. That's funny because that's actually like a word that you're supposed to use now, according to Gen Z. And then I just need a noun, and I couldn't think of anything creative for it, but just a noun, any noun, person, place, thing.
Watch. A watch.
Okay. And then I need a plural noun for a group of people: idiots, winners, pirates, something like that.
Classmates.
And last one, no, not last one. I think there's a couple more here. I need a problem. What's a problem that somebody might have?
How about bad breath?
Bad breath. Okay. I've got the brand name from above, and I think we're just about done here. I need one more noun: person, place, thing, absolutely anything.
Let's go with the tree.
Okay. And let's see. Last one is a number. Any number.
Seven.
Big number 7. Okay.
7. Yeah.
Let's pick a bigger number. Let me say pick a number that is bigger than 1,000.
Okay, that's gonna be 1,234.
1,234. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen here. You'll be able to see this. You're gonna act out person number 2. I'm gonna act out person number 1. We got to get in character. Okay, remember, you are the intern. This is your first day on the job. This is the scene. Are you ready?
Okay.
Oh,
can you make it a little bigger?
Absolutely. Yeah. Good.
There we go.
A little more.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm person 2.
You're person 2. Hello, welcome to your first day at Hippo Banana, the muscular growth agency in the world. First things first, we need to get you felled into our HR system.
Rock on. That sounds spooky.
Something seems to be wrong with the scanner. I'll have to use my foot instead.
Hey, I was hoping you'd say that. At my at my last job, they never let us use our foot.
Okay, well, now that that's all done, we can finally have you log in and start working on some new ads for Levi's. This ad is currently performing the best for them. What do you think of it?
Well, at first glance is drippy. It reminds me of my grandmother's watch.
That's a little harsh, don't you think? Okay, fine. Well, what would you suggest for new ad copy then?
What if it said something instead like, afternoon, classmates? If you're looking for the perfect solution for your bad breath, then look no further than Levi's. Levi's tree. Hold on. and best of all, it's super easy to do, and it only takes 1,234 steps.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Well, sorry.
Okay.
These are funny.
This is just your first day. I'm sure you'll get better at this. That's it. That's our Mad Libs for the day.
Oh, that's cute. That's awesome. Oh man.
Bringing it back home, Robert.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, this is a perfect example of, fun is approved. It doesn't have to be some kind of super serious thought out thing. It could just be a goofy thing where there's no right or wrong answers, and there's no, I feel bad. I was already having such a great time talking to you, and it's like, hey, do that. It's like kind of silly, goofy. Didn't matter how it turned out. It just, just another fun moment.
Absolutely. I want to wrap it up though with something serious. Then, two things. The first thing I'm going to ask you is, if people want to reach out to you, they want to get a hold of you, follow you, where's the best place for them to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, just to make it easy, robertgilbreath.com is my website. It'll get you right to my LinkedIn profile. I'm very open on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to connect, I'm going to say yes. Once we're connected, and if I can be of any help with introductions, and I'm overly honest with those. If someone asks for an introduction, and if I don't believe I'm the right person to make the introduction, I say so. Yeah. But if I feel like there's any way I can help, again, one of my other mantras is I'm here to help. And I do believe that just doing that way with no expectation of anything in return is the way that we can all be better together. So yeah, just robertgilbreath.com will take you to my LinkedIn and connect and message me, and we can talk about what you're up to, and again, see if there's anything I can do to help.
Yeah. Last thing, if there was one more piece of advice that you would give to somebody, we've obviously gone through a lot, but if there was one more thing that you would want to say, and it could be about absolutely anything, about work, about family, about life, about whatever, what would you want to say?
Yeah, I just say back to what we were talking about, connection. Just take a deep breath when you're having a tough time, and try to think back to why you're doing these things, right? And it can be as simple of why am I doing this task, right? And just always try to get back to that, no matter whether it's a task or a big thing. And then be honest with yourself. If you can't back into the why, there's an issue that probably means you need some kind of help. That necessarily mean that you need to see a psychologist or that you need a coach, but it might mean that you need to go to your boss and clarify something, or you might need to go to your significant other and get some clarification. But try to that connection, like I said, comes in different ways. And when you're feeling stressed or feeling out of place a little bit, try to get back to that why piece. And then you're likely to be able to get right back on track.
Thanks. Well, Robert, I really appreciate you coming out here, joining us, sharing a lot of really good insights for how to deal with the stress and problems of being the CEO. And thank you, everybody, for coming out and listening in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.